is tremendous. I mean, people really get to be in a place where there's a space for their emotions to be held versus it just being shut down and not part of the process, or it being leveraged as a tool to rile up another party. So it is good that either the person has some background in human behavior in some way where they understand personalities, they understand how baggage plays into current spaces, that they understand how to help people get from an unstuck place and move forward.
That's interesting, too, because in the book, you kind of give an example of a good divorce versus a bad divorce. And I wonder if you could just kind of walk our listeners through what a good divorce looks like, kind of what the process is and how it goes through in mediation.
Yeah, so in mediation, and I will use that example, the example that we have in the book, they used a little bit of mediation, but mostly they were able to do it on their own. I think the biggest thing, either whether you do it on your own or whether you do it with a mediator, is that starting out, and we do this with our clients, is that we want to know right up front, what is your optimum outcome? In other words, when all is said and done here, what is your outcome? What's it going to look like? Are you and your spouse still going to be friends? Are you going to have a good co-parenting relationship? Are you, what is that outcome that you guys can align around so you're working towards a common goal? And we find that good divorces go back to that place of, when you were in a relationship, you had some common goal, probably can get back to that common goal, and let's figure out what that is so that we can work towards that and continue to work towards that. So that's one of the first major things. We also find that another important part is that, each party, and sometimes this isn't necessary if one person is a lot further along than others, but usually there's good that some venting there's space for venting to occur, whether somebody does that with a counselor, a good friend, with a mediator. We let those issues get put out there so that they're acknowledged and people feel that they've been heard. Those who don't do that can often get stuck, and they will end up, moving back in what we call the transition process. They will be going backwards because they haven't dealt with the frustrations and all the stuff that, brought them to that place. So those are like the two, first things that we want to do to get a good divorce. And then the other one is about disclosure and really being honest and making sure that you're putting everything out there that could be construed in any way as hiding something. So you overshare versus undershare. And so we go through a very thorough process to make sure that everything's put out on the table, and we show a whole big picture of what it looks like, and then we work through creative options to divide things up. We're not looking at it necessarily black and white like a court would. You don't have to divide everything down the middle. What's the best approach for you and your family system? So those are like the three major criteria. One of the ones that we talk about later in the book is having a good team, and that includes your mediator, counselor, things like that. But it also includes having people in your life who are not stirring the pot, to say. They're not having you actually get madder at your ex, because that's not needed at this point in time. You want to move forward and move on and let go. And so choosing team members, people who will support you in a way that you're moving forward in a healthy way, not getting stuck in gossip and getting stuck in the past.
That's a very good point, because sometimes friends and family, they might be well-meaning. They can be the biggest stumbling block in marriages and divorces.
Yes, it's very true.
They think they're supporting. Yeah, they think they're supporting you, so they're kind of like your amen corner. And so you're venting, and they're like, yeah, that's right. And it kind of seems to inflame the situation, where the reality is you're trying to move more towards closure. I was thinking as you were talking, and you were talking about your parents, and I can remember when I first got out of college, there seemed to have been a rash of divorces among some of my childhood friends, their parents who had been married 30 years or more. And this is back in the late 70s. It just seemed all of a sudden, people just saying, that's it, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't have to do this anymore because, society has changed. But it made me think about late life or later in life divorces. Are there certain things that you should be looking out for in terms of a later in life divorce, a relationship that has gone on for 30, 40 years? There's a lot more to divide, I guess. You may not have the kids, but you've got retirement and just maybe illnesses, just all a plethora of issues, it would seem. What kinds of things should one be looking for if they're involved in that kind of a divorce situation?
Yeah, so while this is true of all divorces, and this is something that a lot of people don't know, and it's even more paramount in the 30 to 40-year marriages, is that really you have the highest level of fiduciary responsibility to your spouse. In other words, even though you're not with them anymore, and I see this a lot, people will just say, well, I'm walking away, I'm not giving them anything, I'm not giving them support. No, that's not a great way to approach it, because you guys have taken care of each other, and in a 30 to 40-year marriage, for 30 years, you've taken care of one another. And now you just want to turn around and walk away. You just can't do that. You can't do it like that. You have to look at, okay, how are each of you going to go on and be whole? So in many cases, one person may have been the breadwinner and may have earned the pension, may have earned the retirement, and the other person doesn't have any of that, but they've contributed to raising the kids and all of that for all of those years, which is worth just as much as the person who actually put the money in the pension. So we find that in those cases, what we really have to do is help people understand that at this point in time, it's not your pension. It's our pension. And, it's going to be divided in a way that each of you gets to walk away whole because, you both earned it. You will both put all that sweat and tears in all of those years, even if it was in different capacities. And so that's one of the toughest things for people to really understand, especially if they earn the pension. It's not my pension, it's our pension. And so that's really the biggest part of a 30 to 40-year marriage, is how to separate in a way that leaves both parties as whole as possible financially, because it can be devastating if you just turn and walk away.
Now, from a wellness perspective, in terms of our emotional health, what kinds of things do we need to be looking out for in terms of our emotional health? Where can we turn to for help? What kinds of help is available to kind of support us during that time? What would be your suggestions as a psychologist?
Well, the first thing that I would want people to recognize is that they are going through, again, I call it a transition process. And what that means is there are going to be certain reactions that happen at a certain time as you move through. So in the beginning, when you first find out that you're getting a divorce, there may be a lot of shock and there may be a lot of confusion that goes on. That's natural. But as you move on, you might then get to the anger stage and, you get really angry. And that's okay. Maybe don't direct it at your ex or direct it at other people, but get angry. Go through that emotion, because if you don't, it's just going to catch up with you later. The other part is exploration. It's getting to a point where you're exploring, okay, that's not going to be my life anymore. I don't have that dream, which is one of the biggest emotional stumbling blocks, is that you really are not divorcing the ex as much as you're divorcing the dream that you've created with your ex all of these years. And how do you let that go, and how do you explore a new dream? How do you explore, new activities that you might take on, or things that you've always wanted to do that you didn't do, or a new relationship with your kids that looks different than you had before? So you want to get into that exploration stage. And eventually you want to move to a place of commitment, that you're really committed to this new outcome in your life, this new vision that you've painted, and you want to move towards that. So it's really about being okay with where you are in the process. People will be in it and they'll get so frustrated and so upset and so this shouldn't be happening, I shouldn't, and it's like, no, this is part of the emotional process. It's okay. This is what's supposed to happen. So embrace it. Don't push it away, because pushing it away just prolongs it even longer. And so you'll see a lot of people who might get stuck and aren't able to move on into new relationships. It's because they haven't dealt with that emotional process of transitioning through. So that's one of the biggest things I can suggest is people recognize they're in a process, they take the steps to move through those emotions, and then they get on to their new vision and really working towards their new life.
That's great advice. I think that many times when it comes to the dissolution, dissolving a marriage or a long-term relationship like that, is that they're so busy going through that process that they forget to, the individuals forget to take care of themselves and to take care of their psyche, and, then the whole thing around their expectations of, what was going to be and what is now. And that can be a very difficult process, and it seems like most people need some kind of help in terms of moving past that process. When people are reading your book, what kinds of things do you want them to be able to take away? What kinds of things do you want them to learn?
Well, one of the things in the book that I think really just gets to the heart of the matter, and this is my experience working with hundreds of clients and having a great balance of understanding, finances and how to divide finances and understanding retirement accounts, but also understanding the human behavior side. But it's really there's a great chapter on what do you need to know about your finances. What do you need to look out for? What kinds of questions do you need to ask? Because a lot of people will come into the divorce and they'll have made some agreements and they'll not have considered that there is more going on than they think there is, because in today's world, most people don't even know what their net worth is. So people will come in and they'll say, okay, well, I have $100,000 in my pension, and I'm going to divide that. Well, really, when you look at it, that's only their contributions. They actually probably have a $600,000 pension, and they don't realize it because most people are not educated on their pensions nowadays. So that chapter just has nuggets of information for you to understand really what you need to look for in your finances so that you can ask the right questions. And if you can arm yourself with that kind of knowledge, then, needing to feel protected is not as necessary because you've got the big picture. You've got the information you need. So I think that is really one of the most important chapters to jump into right away, just so you understand what you're going to be, dealing with in terms of those finances.
Have you ever had a situation where people have started mediation and through the mediation process made a decision not to move forward?
Yes, actually, we have had, and I usually keep pretty good track of it, 6 cases of that happen. And I tell people if they are doubtful when they come in that if there is any way you can save your marriage, it is through mediation. In one case, as an example, as soon as we opened up the finances, because one person controlled the finances, as soon as we opened up the finances and we gave one person more power around the finances and knowledge around the finances, then all of a sudden the obstacle of them being together completely evaporated, because now they were both on the same playing field around the finances. And yeah, I mean, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. And then, there are other cases where people, we've actually had 2 cases where they got remarried. So they divorced and then got remarried. So that wasn't in the 6. That would actually be on top of the 6. Because again, in our process, you start to talk. You start to, we're very good at pinpointing, okay, this is what's going on with your spouse. Here's the baggage that broke your relationship down. Here's how it's showing. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, that's what happened. And and they can say, oh, well, then maybe we can fix it. And it's not always fixable. I mean, 6 cases